How to identify sellers willing to enter into lease option agreement. Finding lease option sellers is the first step in the process. It is very easy or significantly easier to locate a buyer for a property than to locate a property for a buyer. That's why we always begin our investigations with the seller. Although we frequently work remotely, I believe it's best to begin locally. By locating houses in your neighborhood, this enables you to develop a personal relationship with buyers and sellers. There are two primary methods of communication with the seller, phone or email. We use additional forms such as text messaging, snail mail, but you want to start with easy leads and expand them as you gain experience closing these deals and require additional leads to work with. How to make a phone offer to a vendor. It can be very intimidating if you have never used a phone for business before. It's a lot easier if you're in sales or have a good rapport with people. When you first begin making offers, those with whom you speak know that you are inexperienced. As a result, you must fake it. Although I'm not a big fan of fake it till you make it, but if you are totally inexperienced, you have to pretend that you are experienced with it, or you must learn and practice to do it. You must develop the ability to feign competence unless you achieve it. It only takes practice, but that doesn't mean you cannot close deals. Even if you sound like an idiot, simply put, it's more complicated. Finally, the most critical thing is to demonstrate to the seller that you are genuinely caring for them, that you genuinely care for their well-being. When they see that you're putting them first, not yourself, their attitude and trust will shift in your favor. For rent voice script, lease option agreement memo, residence document, residence addendum document, and the tenant buyer application are all included in the package. Purchase the rent voice script, examine it and familiarize yourself with it. Search your neighborhood and by clicking the FSBO sites, or you should follow as we teach you how to do the Facebook ads. And you can also check like your local classified ads or other FSBO websites. But for us, Facebook ads have been very effective. We'll also teach the Facebook ads, how to place the Facebook ads to find the sellers who are willing to enter into lease option agreements. Cold calls. Making cold calls is not something that we highly suggest, but it still remains a fairly good technique to employ if you're good at it. We use other techniques like Facebook ads to create the leads. When automated, this becomes significantly easier. When you automate, the system contacts you, the seller, on your behalf, and the sellers contact you. Allowing them to contact you alters the conversation dynamics significantly. Nevertheless, if you are comfortable with cold calls, you can practice and use this ability to develop such discussions. But if you are good in advertising like we teach you to be, then you would not need to do the cold calls. Talking to the sellers. The voice script. Hello, I'm contacting you regarding the rental property you have available. I'm curious if you would consider selling your home on a rent-to-own basis rather than simply renting it. I'm interested. If you'll consider it, please call 647-408-6929. Kind regards. Talk to you soon. Take care. Now, if they proceed with yes, then use the yes script. If they respond to you with a resounding no, begin by inquiring as suggested below. Important. Do not hang up until 5 times you hear no, or they hang up on you. They would not advertise their home if they were not experiencing difficulty. I realize this sounds crazy, but you need to learn how to deal with no. You will only learn how to deal with no through practice. And keep in mind, once you develop the ability to communicate effectively on phone, this issue will resolve itself. It's only temporary unless you develop the ability to make offers. Inquire about the following. After responding to the objection, proceed directly to the yes dialogue. Why would it be otherwise? Are you considering long-term ownership of your property? What if I could obtain a market value for you without requiring you to pay any commissions? What difference does that make? The information I have right now could be highly beneficial to you. I have several potential buyers interested in doing lease options in your area, and they are eager to make a move. I'm at loss for words, as if I'm handing you an ad of $100 bills and you're saying no thanks. As long as they continue to say no, use the pink questions below immediately. If the answer is yes or maybe, the following steps apply. To begin with, let me explain my predicament. I'm somewhat pressed for time. I sell my home on rent-to-own basis, and right now, as a result of my success with my last home online advertising, I have an excellent source of buyers in my system interested in renting to own option on a home. They can afford monthly payments, qualify for a mortgage within a year or two, and additionally, they will pay the total market value for your home, and you will avoid having to pay the real estate agent commissions. Additionally, the lease option tenants take better care of the property than the typical tenants because they view it as theirs. Additionally, they have a written agreement with them, and that holds them accountable for house repairs, and if the furnace fails, they will repair it. Likewise, you will not have to deal with the plumbing that gets clogged. It elevates a great deal of landlord stress. And best of all, you owe me nothing. The buyer compensates me. Does that sound like something that you would consider? Just keep in mind, one thing to bear in mind is that do not take yes as an answer. Ascertain that you comprehend their situation, and occasionally people will say yes to get off the phone. If the answer is no, then proceed with the paying questions below. Are you current on your mortgage payments? How long were you without a house? Have you been a landlord for an extended period of time? Did you ever have to evict a tenant? What percentage of your income do you spend on repairs? What type of lease do you prefer, longer or shorter? How much maintenance have you performed since the last tenant vacated? Or has it been that since you purchased the property? How much rent have you ever received? What if I could secure an additional $50 or $100 payment for you? If they assert they can handle the lease option on their own, here's the response. If you find a buyer in the interim that's acceptable, the contract contains a clause stating that you may be released at any time. How long did you look for a buyer renter? Ensure that you maintain control of the conversation. By asking questions, you can exert control over the conversation. Whoever poses the question maintains the control of the conversation. Begin by posing pain-related questions. It's pretty standard for people to have no idea what they are doing. Ascertain their situation. Have you contacted a real estate professional? Do you know how much time it takes to sell the property on the average in your area? Utilize the Socrates method of selling. It's occasionally referred to as the consultation selling method. You guide others and they arrive at their own conclusions. By asking appropriate questions, you can nudge them into the right direction. Once mastered, it becomes a second nature. remain on the phone unless you have heard at least 5 times no. If the response is yes, I'm interested, the following would apply. That's acceptable. I've got one-page lease option agreement that I'm going to email it to you. It's pretty simple. Allow me to read it to you quickly so that you understand. It takes only a split second. Additionally, this agreement doesn't bind you to anything. You can opt out at any time. Read the memo to them and then inquire. Is that clear? Are you sure you don't have any questions? Excellent. I will email it to you immediately. As soon as you receive it, can you sign it and send it back to me? I'll call you to schedule a property appointment. Then I will email you the information to my list the following morning. What is your email address? Important note, if they are not near a computer, inquire when they will be and then contact them. If they do not return your email as promised, appropriate follow-up is critical to the success of this process. Additionally, you may use automation techniques. You can have them complete the memo online, simplify the process significantly. We use HelloSign to send them the documents to sign. You can use any DocuSign software or simply sending it via email. E-signatures like HelloSign save a lot of time and a hassle and they get signed more accurately as they guide where the initial will be, where the signatures will be, where the name and the dates will be. We highly suggest using such service like HelloSign to sign all the documents, and we have all these documents in HelloSign for you to use, which you could subscribe to use. It becomes very easy for the seller to sign these documents accurately. If they return to no or maybe following after reading the memo to them, a certain why and then return to the paying questions. When you receive a yes, have the individual complete and sign the lease option agreement memo. When they do, they appoint you as the transactions principal. This allows you to sell the property to another party. As with anything, it requires practice. It may not be very comforting at first, but it will quickly become a second nature. What is the worst case scenario? All required is that you move on to the next prospective seller. Nothing is harmed except your ego. And if you stick with the process, you still stand to gain quite a bit. I could write an entire multi-volume series on communicating effectively with sellers. I suggest that you begin doing it. Be prepared for it to take out some time before becoming proficient. I would also recommend recording your conversations so that you can get off the phone and listen to how they went. Follow with some severe self-criticism. It can be painful and discouraging, but it's necessary to hear. After listening to your recording, you should be able to ask yourself, would I work with this guy? If not, you must improve. Making email offers to sellers. Additionally, you can send emails to prospective sellers. You can use Craigslist or any FSBO website or newspapers to locate the sellers. You should be aware that after 15 emails, the Craigslist will terminate your account, believing that you're spamming the advertisers. To circumvent this, you can use multiple email addresses and allow at least 15 minutes between emails from any one email address. We do not recommend that. We use Facebook ads to drive traffic to our webinars, where the potential customers opt in after they understand the concept and they like the concept. They opt in their email addresses to watch the webinars. If they like what they see and hear in the webinar, they will book a call for an appointment with us and they will fill out the questionnaire. This totally reverses the response because now they are contacting us instead of we contacting them. And it becomes less of a hassle for us because now it's more proactive approach from their end. And all we have to do is run more ads if we want more feedback, or if we want more sellers. If you're still using the old method, which is Craigslist and other ways of finding the sellers, so then your initial email response is like this: is how are you? If you have it, I use their name. If I have it, I saw your ad in the Craigslist and wondered if you would be interested in selling your home under rent-to-own. And if that's the case, I would be interested in purchasing it. Kindly respond to my email and contact me at the following number, 647-408-6929. With sincere appreciation, kind regards, Gurmeet. Whenever someone responds to your email, click their email address and phone number, and if they provide, and begin by compiling a prospective list of prospective sellers. Utilize an Excel sheet for this, and enables you to sort out their names. And even better, if you have an excellent autoresponder, I will demonstrate how it works. We use the Aweber for this purposes. Contact the individual immediately. Use the phone script that we have provided. And if the individual express an interest but you couldn't contact them, send them the email or send them the detailed information about what you do and how you can help them. Assemble a call to action within that information. Alternatively, you can direct them to the website that will explain everything to them. Secondly, an email. How are you? And the individual's name. I emailed you whether you would consider a rent-to-own agreement instead of selling the property outright. Because you indicated that you might think about it, I wanted to speak to you about it. I'm very much interested in purchasing under rent-to-own and can close quickly. Kindly notify me if this is acceptable to you. Please contact at 647-408-6929. With sincere appreciation, Gurmeet Singh. And if they do not respond, add them to your follow-up list. When you accumulate sufficient number of leads, this is a lead funnel. You may add many leads at the top of the funnel and few will trickle out the bottom of over time. You may not get a large percentage of them, but you will get some, which is why you should always keep the funnel full. Having a funnel in place like this will make a difference between occasionally or having a real business with sales coming in consistently. To manage these, you need an effective system in place. If you don't get a response from the seller for the next few days, you can send them a similar email with few modifications. Continue following up until they tell you to leave or your email address becomes invalid or they stop you from contacting them. Always continue to follow up. If you automate something, it will always be completed. So the way we do is very simply, because they opt in, they're highly likely to pick up the phones, they're highly likely to set up the phone calls. So it's best to send them reminders well in advance to get in touch with them, that on this day you will be having a phone call conversation with them. And always do not leave the time for appointments too far off. It should be within the 48 hours because people tend to forget if it's too much far in distance. And if you are opting in for the phone call, we would suggest having it within the 48 hours. Points to keep in mind. Take the time to listen to what the client is saying and attempt to determine the source of their pain. What issue can you assist in resolving? Bear in mind that they are not concerned with you. They are only concerned with their problem. The only reason they are speaking to you is to ascertain whether you are the solution to their problem. So make sure you understand their problem and make sure you address their problem and prove or show to them that you can solve their problem. Individualize the solution to their problem based on their requirement. That's why it's critical to understand the zero-down structure hierarchy. As I mentioned previously in this training, the more tools you have, the more you can accomplish. And if you have only hammer, everything appears to be a nail. If you can demonstrate all their options, they will appreciate how much sense it makes to work with you. Ensure you keep your commitments. When you tell someone that you are going somewhere, be sure to follow up on time. Respond immediately to inquiries. Timeliness is critical. You lose credibility if you break your word, if you fail to do. One method is to partially automate the process through using use of a virtual assistant. There's a way to automate the lead generation process partially. You can hire a contractor from Elance, or you can pay them a small fee to send emails to multiple email addresses in response to your Craigslist. But if you send 100 of them, you're likely to receive response from 5 to 6 people who will say, yes, I'm interested in hearing about it. And then you will be able to speak to those individuals and earn their trust and convert them into clients. But if they are calling you or contacting you through Facebook ads after seeing the webinar, now the response rate is way higher. You should have at least 30 to 50% of the people telling yes to you. Yes, they are interested in receiving more information from you, and because they have been already briefed about and in the webinar, and they know how you can solve their problem. What to do if you're told, yes, I'm going to sell under rent-to-own or rent-to-buy? When you receive a positive response from the seller, you must have them complete the one-page lease option agreement memo. It requests the seller's name, first name and last name, property address, and the purchase price. Pricing the home. It's irrelevant what price they ask as long as it's not absurdly above the market rate. Monthly payments are much more important to the buyers than the purchase price. The reason for this is that the majority of the buyers will never exercise their purchase option. Less than 30% of the lease option purchases exercise their option. Your seller must be aware of this. However, while the tenant is occupying the property, it halts the bleeding. It provides them with someone to make a mortgage payment on their behalf. Additionally, it places someone in there who is merely a tenant, but who views themselves as the owner of the property, and this type of person will take care of the property. You are familiar with the adage, you don't wash a rental car. When something is their own, people tend to take a better care. As a result, the buyer of a lease option will more likely view the property as their own and take care of it. Additionally, we require the buyer-seller to make all the necessary repairs under the property, under the lease option agreement. Thus, it benefits the landlord, though it can be challenging to enforce. Under the ELP system, the automated lease purchase system that we invented, our purchase rates for the tenant buyers have gone up tremendously. Around 50 to 70% of the clients close than the traditional 30%, because we ensure in those agreements and in those system of payment that the buyer, the tenant buyer, saves up enough down payment in order to be able to purchase the property. The lease options terms are as follows. Typically, a 3-year lease option is preferred. You can do it for a shorter period, but 3-year make it easier to find a buyer. For a majority of the landlord, the 3-year makes it perfect sense. For 3 years, not having to worry about someone moving out can be a wonderful thing. The lease options terms will begin when the buyer acquires the lease option tenant for the property. The buyer will assign the lease option agreement to the new lease option tenant. The seller retains the approval authority over the new lease option tenant. Therefore, if you dislike the tenant you are bringing them, they are not obliged to accept it. This is a message you are conveying to them. You are making this straightforward document for the seller to sign by assuring them that they have the final say in the tenant selection process. The seller may utilize the lease option agreement forms and may utilize the form selected by the seller when the tenant buyer moves in. As the seller has the right to terminate the agreement at any time if they secure their tenant or choose not to sell, we have discovered they frequently abdicate their duties as a seller signs this. They do not continue to look for the buyer for that property. They allow you to take it over. The following line reads, the buyer intends to locate the lease option tenant and charge the lease option tenant for the assignment of this lease option agreement memo. The lease option tenant will then pay the seller the monthly lease payment, and the option is exercised or the option term expires. The seller agrees to allow the buyer to place a sign for advertising property for sale in the yard. I would add that do not accept the deal unless the seller agrees to permit you to post a sign in the yard. If they have a sign in their yard and use the marketing techniques I'm teaching you to drive traffic to it, they're going to steal your buyer and you're going to lose it, and therefore ensure the sign in the yard is yours, not someone else. Continuing the agreement where the buyer doesn't acquire the tenant of the lease option to assign this contract, the memo shall become null and void within 90 days of acceptance of this lease option memo. Following that is a necessary disclosure. The buyer is the principal in this transaction and is not a licensed real estate agent. If you are, you may amend the document to state that you are a licensed agent, but you are acting as a principal in this transaction rather than as an agent. You do not speak for them. After they sign, you have a document granting you the authority to sell the property. Thus, it's a very cool and very simple way to acquire a property without spending a dime or using your credit and relying on your income to qualify it. This is lovely and wonderful thing.